What's up guys, welcome to the channel. My name is Meg. So today we're breaking down Ahsoka Season 1, Episode 1. They released 1 and 2 back to back, but I'll break down Episode 2 on a separate video. It'll be up soon, so watch out for that as well. Needless to say, we'll be discussing some spoilers, so watch out for those. Let's get into the episode. Let's go. So first off, this is the kind of show that needs a bit of context before diving into, and it's a bit of a problem for some, especially if they're coming in cold to the series, because this show is basically the live action sequel to Star Wars Rebels, the animated TV show, and as you'll see later on, they don't really do a lot of explaining for the first 2 episodes. So you need to watch at least the very last season of Star Wars Rebels, and for a little bit of context on Ahsoka herself, later seasons of Clone Wars, and throw a little bit of Book of Boba Fett and Mando Season 2 in there as well. I know it's a lot of homework to do, but it is what it is. The Disney Star Wars timelines are a little bit confusing, but just to make it clear, the events in Ahsoka occur after the Empire's downfall, after Return of the Jedi, and before The Force Awakens. So several years after Vader's redemption and the end of the Emperor, the opening title crawl reads, "The evil Galactic Empire has fallen and a new republic has risen to take its place. However, sinister agents are already at work to undermine the fragile peace. A plot is underway to find the lost Imperial Grand Admiral Thrawn and bring him out of exile. The rumors of his return are instilling hope to former Imperials in the galaxy to start a new war and rekindle the old Empire." So former Jedi Knight Ahsoka Tano, which is also vague in terms of the lore, and I'm sure a lot of people are confused by. The big reason Disney is phrasing it this way is if they declare her as a Jedi, which of course she basically is, it would undermine that Luke should be the only Jedi at this point in time, even though Ahsoka has been referred to multiple times in these 2 episodes as a Jedi. She was part of the Order, but having left without completing her training. In fact, she was a Padawan, so technically not making her a Jedi Knight. Also, don't want to get into the great Jedi stuff. Suffice it to say, they don't want her to be an official Jedi, but she acts in the show as if she was. In fact, she acts like a Jedi Master taking on an apprentice. I mean, she's not even supposed to be ranked as a Jedi Knight, but what the hell. A lot of things are vague here, as you'll see. Pretty much like the dark side users are not Sith, but dark Jedi, which, let's be honest, doesn't make all that much sense. And there's also another aspect of the dark side that isn't called the dark side, but referred to as magic, because reasons. Just to introduce the witches, the sisters of Dathomir, so there's that. The title crawl also mentions Morgan Elsbeth, who we saw from Mandalorian Season 2, who started out as a regular baddie for Ahsoka to fight one-on-one. She kind of reveals that there's a map that's vital to their plans, aka Thrawn's return. She was captured by Ahsoka and is being taken to trial by the New Republic. As the crawl rolls away, a massive New Republic flies into the scene, apparently transporting the prisoner, and we see the New Republic crew as they're being approached by what looks like a repurposed Imperial Lambda-class shuttle, which to me is a dead giveaway, but hey, they have an old Jedi code. The captain inexplicably calls their bluff, which is funny to me because they're transporting a high-value prisoner. He goes down and meets them with a handful of security detail, plus a bipedal fish, and they couldn't even spare a few X-Wings as escorts. So the code thing is meant to be a callback to Return of the Jedi. As the ship lands, the ramp lowers to reveal 2 hooded figures coming out of the shuttle, which is like the scene in Phantom Menace where Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi walk out of their ship in the Trade Federation donut ships. The hooded figures are Baylan Skol and Shin Hati. Despite appearances, they aren't Sith at all, as I said, but dark Jedi mercenaries, and that's a key term here, Force users for hire, and they're here to save Elsbeth. So the captain confronts them, as I said, with a handful of New Republic soldiers or maybe security detail, even though they know these individuals are a threat. Anyway, the captain doesn't believe they are who they say they are, so attempts to arrest them, at which point Baylon signals his apprentice to ignite her orange lightsaber and fights the soldiers to clear a path to Elsbeth's cell. By the way, Baylan Skol is played by the late Ray Stevenson, RIP, which is one of the most interesting characters in the show so far, and he seems reluctant to shed any lives here. And I kind of noticed this side of him manifest later on in the 2nd episode when asked to deal with another threat, but we'll get to that. As Shin fights the soldiers, the captain draws his blaster. Baylon uses the Force to control his hand, which is a handy trick, which is also employed by Darth Vader, but on one of the Imperial Imperial officers' throats in A New Hope. Baylon admits they aren't Jedi and thrusts his orange lightsaber through the captain's chest. Then a fight sequence ensues that looks like that badass Darth Vader hallway scene from Rogue One. So Baylon deflects blaster bolts back at the New Republic troops. Pretty cool, I have to say, even though it goes by pretty quick. He's very skilled and powerful with the Force as he opens Elsbeth's prison door. Also uses his powers to uncover. Then we switch to Ahsoka in a planet called Arcana, apparently a stronghold built by the ancient Nightsisters of Dathomir. Now the Nightsisters were a group of very powerful magic wielding beings referred to as witches in the Star Wars universe that could rival the most powerful Force users in the galaxy like Dooku and even Palpatine. One such is Mother Talzin, who's been a big player in the Clone Wars series. So Ahsoka uses her sabers to stab the ground and twirl it to make an entrance into a chamber below, which looks kind of cool, but admittedly it's not really the best way to enter an unknown location, if you know what I mean. For all she knows, the entire chamber might be filled with booby traps, but I guess she knew from the script. The next scene seems to be directly ripped from Jedi Survivor as we get a puzzle solving situation without any dialogue. The place is filled with figures holding golden orbs, and she leans on a small pillar as if trying to hear through the Force. At first I didn't think too much of this, but there's a later scene that would confirm that this is kind of a new power for her. It seems she has the ability to see events through the Force. Yes, psychometry or sense echo as referred in the game Jedi Fallen Order, which is the Force ability of getting info about people or events by touching it, an ability displayed by Cal Kestis and also Quinlan Vos. She eventually was able to twist and turn the three pillars to the correct position where it retracted to the floor as a fourth one at the center of the room rises. She gets a hold of a ball that's encased in some kind of sand. This sphere contains information of Grand Admiral Thrawn's location. From the looks of it, the ball looks a lot like a Zepho sphere, but as you'll see later on, might be a combination of two video game MacGuffins, which is a Zepho sphere and the Rakatan star maps from Knights of the Old Republic. Now they might be tying the Zepho with ancient Nightsisters, but it wasn't referred in the game, nor was it clarified in the episode, so we'll leave it at that. So she reaches out to Huyang, her companion droid, is voiced by the awesome David Tennant, which you might remember from the Clone Wars as the droid assisting younglings with a lightsaber construction. Specifically, we saw him during the Illumined episode with Master Yoda. So Huyang has been flying her ship, which admittedly is pretty cool as well and has an Old Republic look to it, but there's some comm interference, so she jumps out of the chamber with a map where she is ambushed by 5 HK assassin droids, short for Hunter Killer series assassin droids. Now, there have been HK droid variations in Star Wars lore. My favorite one is HK-47 from the KOTOR games because of his murdery personality. How these are related to that model, I'm not sure, but apparently these droids are geared for melee combat with the Jedi, as we see one wielding an electro staff kind of thing, which protects it from those pesky lightsabers. Ahsoka, having been trained by Anakin, of course, is able to defeat these droids as they end up self-destructing, igniting their super explodey cores, which by the looks of it, Dave Filoni might have watched a little too much Oppenheimer. Ahsoka is able to outrun the blast radius by jumping to the ramp of her ship as Huyang pilots it off planet, which is a callback to episode 1 where Qui-Gon jumps into the ship away from Maul. There's a lot of episode 1 references here, as you'll see, and we'll get to the others in due time. So Ahsoka tells Huyang to stay lower next time and have her back, to which he replies that's the job for a Jedi Padawan learner, which is of course foreshadowing a later plot with Sabine Wren, as well as reminding her that she used to be one. Then they rendezvous with a New Republic fleet that's investigating the prisoner transport ship Baylan and Shin broke Elsbeth out of. Fleet Command hails her by her codename Fulcrum, which is yet another callback to Rebels. At this point, we meet another Rebels character, Hera Syndulla, played by Mary Elizabeth Winstead, who incidentally is the wife of Obi-Wan Kenobi, Alec McGuinness. I'm just kidding. They go over the whole recordings of Baylan and Shin, who didn't bother to wipe anything so Ahsoka can actually see what they look like. Luckily, she doesn't recognize Baylan, even though she was part of the Jedi Order, same as him, and would probably be in the Order at the same time because he also fought in the Clone Wars, as confirmed later by Huyang. So Ahsoka says there are very few Force users to date, which doesn't seem all that true, but she asks Huyang to run a check on lightsabers, which he can't do visually apparently, and it needs to do off screen so she can talk to Hera. She shows Hera the golden globe and informs her this will lead to Thrawn, and there are whispers of his survival, which would also mean Ezra is alive as well. Hera tells Ahsoka that you know who can help you with this. Of course, they meant Sabine Wren. I'm having a hard time believing we won't be seeing any of the original trilogy characters in this show, given what happens. For one, they're trying to sell Thrawn as this big galactic threat, and we all know at the time this was all taking place, Leia is heavily involved with the New Republic, Luke is building his own Jedi Order, and Han Solo is running around with Chewbacca. Moving to Lothal, we join Governor Ryder Azadi, who's commemorating Ezra and honoring him in memory for sacrificing himself, along with the help of Kanan, Zeb, and the rest of the Rebels team. That's depicted like how they are in the animated show. As I said, this show is basically Rebels Season 5, continuing a lot of the story beats directly after what happens from the last season. Then we see the other main character in the show, Sabine Wren, who's riding her speeder being all rebellious, refusing to stop when asked by authorities, slipping by them effortlessly. And speaking of this scene, they finally put to screen an EU craft from Dark Reign, supposedly even better than the iconic X-Wing, all according to Legacy. We see two E-Wing starfighters. Sabine goes to the old communications tower, which she has made her hideout, the exact place Ezra used to live in. After feeding the mandatory practical puppet, she activates an old hologram of Ezra. Clearly, she's missing him, and she listens as he talks about the sacrifices he made to defeat Thrawn. You know, the scene with the Purgils, which have been teased a lot in other Star Wars IPs as well. Shin Hati and Morgan Elsbeth are in Arcana, the ruins where the droids detonated an atomic bomb apparently in the temple where Ahsoka got the Golden Globe map. It's a good thing it wasn't obliterated. Elsbeth reveals that she's a descendant of the Nightsisters of Dathomir, making her one of the few survivors of their planet's purge, and would explain why she lacks distinctive features of a Dathomirian like Merrin from Jedi Survivor. Although I did notice her hair changes from Mandalorian Season 2 to Ahsoka, where she had darker hair. Maybe she dyed it that way to hide her features. In any case, this might be the plan from the beginning, but my guess is this is Filoni retconning her character to fit into the story, as she didn't exhibit any powers or even looked anything like the Nightsisters during her duel with Ahsoka. Plus, this can be explained that she was just trying to conceal her true identity or whatever. They confirm that Ahsoka probably has the map. Then Elsbeth tells Baylan to send Shin to Lothal to find Sabine, who they know is the former prince of Ahsoka, and that she'll give her the map. How exactly did they know that? It's not explained. Back at the comms tower, Sabine's having nightmares about Ezra, like literally saying it's up to her now. And there's also one thing that foreshadows Sabine's importance in the Filoniverse. If you listen to her dreams, you can hear the Obi-Wan Kenobi Alec Guinness line, "The Force will be with you always," but this time it's Ezra saying it. Why exactly did they use this line is anybody's guess. Anyway, she wakes up just in time to see Ahsoka's ship going to the city, escorted by the X-Wings, which the transport ship could have used early on in the episode. So Ahsoka and Sabine meet up. Ahsoka kind of brings her up to speed about the map, hoping that her artistic mind can decipher the orb. If you're new to Dave Filoni's Rebels, Sabine is this artsy Mandalorian princess that loves to ruin stuff with her paint, which is exactly the kind that could turn a few knobs on an orb. They argue about Ahsoka not being there for Sabine, and Ahsoka says being a Jedi isn't easy, where Sabine says she would have made a good one. The two clearly have a lot of issues to work out. However, Hu Yang interrupts them as he has information on Baylan and Shin's lightsaber hills from his database. So Sabine, checking out the map, asks Ahsoka to take it with her so she can think clearly, and Ahsoka says no in case it gets stolen, which could cause out an all-out war. Sabine, being the punk rock rebel she is, disobeys and vanishes with it. Ahsoka, stumped, didn't realize that she went to the only other place in this entire planet aside from the city. I mean, there's literally one super space highway that leads to a single derelict tower. I mean, come on. Hu Yang ran an analysis of the lightsabers of Shin Hati and Baylan Skol. He couldn't recognize Shin's, but he recognizes Baylan Skol's, mentioning that he instructed many students over the years, but there's only one person who created a lightsaber hilt as unique as this one, and that belongs to that guy, who appeared during the end of the Clone Wars, meaning Order 66. And this belongs probably to the Master, and the other one is to the newer Apprentice, which might be an oversight because Ahsoka should have known who he is, having participated in the Clone Wars. It hasn't been revealed how he escaped, but I'm sure they'll eventually get around to it, explaining in one of the episodes. But for the past years, after Order 66, he was able to hide from the Empire, but he's been going around apparently as a mercenary. What's clear is that Shin Hati isn't from the temple given her age, but that doesn't explain why she has a Padawan grade, unless Baylan's continuing Jedi traditions, which is the only logical explanation at this point. Sabine goes home to tinker with the map, where a probe droid is sent to track her as it returns to Shin Hati atop a hill, giving us a similar scene as Darth Maul in The Phantom Menace when it was tracking Anakin Skywalker and Qui-Gon Jinn. So we see Hera's hologram discussing with Ahsoka regarding Sabine's disobedience. Hera tells her that she's Mandalorian and that's expected. Hera mentions how Anakin probably found Ahsoka difficult at times. The complete tone of the scene changes and becomes very serious and ominous, and Ahsoka becomes stern, replying to her she's never finished training with Anakin and that she walked away from Anakin much like she walked away from Sabine. Sabine finally opens the map as it expels coordinates, and then she was ambushed by HK assassin droids who's able to steal it. She grabs Ezra's lightsaber and meets Shin Hati downstairs, then ignites it as they fight. Shin shows off her training and I believe kind of toying with Sabine here. I find it hard to believe that she's able to go toe-to-toe with an apprentice, even a Padawan learner level, but I guess Filoni wanted to stretch the scene out to pad onto the episode. What's more is that Shin has the Force, and from what we gather, Sabine doesn't have any kind of Force power. Even Hu Yang was kind of teasing her about this, and of course making Shin much more powerful than Sabine. Plus she's been training this entire time, whereas Sabine hasn't been doing that as much, maybe just moping in her room. That braid she has, I don't think it means that she's been trained in both ways of the Force, making her kind of like both Jedi and Sith. Maybe Baylon is trying to continue some of the Jedi traditions, and I would say just leaning into the ideals of the Jedi more, but kind of not shunning some of the darker aspects of that, which I admit is a very interesting aspect of these characters and kind of makes me think that their orange lightsabers are particularly like that because they used to have, as you remember, they used to have blue or green ones, and they're now more like towards the dark side of that spectrum. Ahsoka and Hu Yang race to Sabine, but not in time. As she is stabbed in the stomach, I could just see Qui-Gon Jinn flipping them off as a Force ghost for doing this. By the end of episode 1, Shin Hati gets away with the map. Sabine survives a stab from a weapon that melts freaking space alloy in seconds. Right off the bat, the Ahsoka show looks phenomenal, as most of the promotions would tell you, very similar to Andor, which begs the question why Kenobi looks the way it did. Filoni relies a lot on the audience having foreknowledge of the events from Rebels and other things, which might end up confusing newer fans, even Mandalorian fans who aren't into Rebels. Speaking of which, Rebels is fine as a show. I mean, it's leaning to younger audiences with family dynamics and some goofball elements with Ezra and Chop, but when you attempt to tell it in a completely different tone like Filoni tries to do here, it kind of falls flat for me. It doesn't blend well. There are a few moments where the episode dragged on a bit and Filoni is definitely gunning for a bigger overall story, but ultimately rings hollow when we know other players that should be involved are not, because they want to prop up these lesser characters. But still, I'm curious where he'll take the story. Maybe we'll get some good development along the pipeline where we go with this new galaxy that we're about to learn in the next episode. So stay tuned for the next breakdown. I hope you enjoyed the episode 1 breakdown I did here. Make sure to leave a like on the video. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.